So we're on chapter 8 in your biology book of the nervous system. And we're going to be going through this pretty quickly because you did have it in health. And so I hope that maybe you already did your quizzes on this, so this may be review. But we're going to go through it pretty quickly. So we're going to be talking about the nervous systems and how nerves work, reflex actions, parts of the brain, importance of avoiding alcohol, and neurological diseases and sense organs like the ear and the eye. So the nervous system, I like how it starts in your book here, and it's kind of amazing, really. Let me go on. See this picture of, this is a picture of a axon, a nerve with the dendrites on it. So pretty cool picture. So we're going to be talking about the nervous system. I like what it says here. See if you can read it. That basically, I started right here. Only people have the ability to use language, exercise judgment, solve difficult problems, produce creative objects and ideas, and transmit abstract notions from one person to another. Only people, not animals, can do that. So we know that only people, you can see how God created man in his image. The human nervous system is so complex that biologists have not been able to explore it fully. It's so complex. How could it have evolved? No way. So let's go on here. I'm going to go on to the next. I'm going to push this down a little bit. And we're going to be talking about the outline of the nervous system. But before we do that, up here it says neurobiologist studies the nervous system, and a neurologist, if you're going to go to the neurologist, like your mom has to go to a neurologist, and so do I sometimes, is a doctor, a physician who specializes in the disorders of the nervous system. Those are two things you probably need right there. So now on the outline of the nervous system, we're going to be talking about the central nervous system first. Well, there's a central nervous system. There's actually two divisions here, and you can't really see them. I should have put them both in bold print, but we have the central nervous system and we have the peripheral nervous system. Those are the parts of your nervous system. So the central nervous system includes the brain and the spinal cord, and they're encased in a bone protection that we've talked about in the last chapter. And the peripheral nervous system consists of all the nerves that branch out from that system. So let's talk here. We're going to go on and talk about the brain. First of all, the brain, and then onto the spinal cord. And then we're going to talk about the meninges, which are the protective matter there. So let's go on to the next. So I like this picture here. So we're going to be talking about, talking about the brain. So the brain is the peripheral here, but you can see where the brain is up here, of course. So what about this brain? The brain is protected by the cranium. That's the bones on outside. And the brain is the principal organ of your body. It contains the higher centers of thought, and also it's the chief organ of the whole mind. And how much does a brain weigh? About 3 pounds. And it contains more knowledge than several tons of books. You have so much knowledge in your mind. Talk about a computer. So containing all of this. And it also receives message from the eyes and ears and muscles, and also from the blood and body fluids and organs, and conducts as for that higher centers, and also the higher centers of learning there. So, and here we have, this is central nervous system, and here we have the spinal cord. The spinal cord, what is that? It's a thick bundle of nerve fibers located within the spinal cavity, inside the spinal cavity. So these are nerve fibers inside the spinal cavity. And the upper end merges with the brainstem up here, where the brainstem is, and the lower, going down to the upper end, the lower comes down to the lumbar area. So how many pairs of nerves branch from the cord and extend out through the gaps of the vertebrae? We have 31 pairs of nerves, of spinal nerves that transmit nerve signals to and from the body. And then there's another 12 nerves up towards the cranium, which branch from the brainstem, and they transmit nerve signals from the eyes, ears, mouth, face, and scalp. So here we have this going down in this area. The end of the spinal cord comes down here to the lumbar area, And there's 10, actually, of all the nerves that come through this down to the lumbar, down into your legs, there's 10 spinal nerves that continue past the end through the lumbar. So they go down to your legs. So you can see how this branches off. So this is the central nervous system, and of course the peripheral nervous system are all these nerves that come off of it. So as for the talking about the spinal cord there, we're going to talk about the meninges. So what are meninges? So the meninges actually are, have you ever heard of meningitis? Well, the meninges, let's see if we go down here, talking about the meninges. Here we go. The meninges here, so are composed of 2 layers, or actually 3 layers. You think they're composed of the dura mater, or dura mater. I always thought it was matter, but it's mater, dura mater, and that's the outer layer of the strongest tissue in the body. The meninges are to protect those nerves. And so they have this outer strong tissue in the body, and it's like it's very flexible, but it's very strong. And then we have what's called the arachnoid. What's an arachnoid? Is a spider. So that's why they named it. It is like looks like a spider-like type, like a spider's web that forms a 3-dimensional type network around the brain, called the arachnoid matter. So we have dura mater, the outer layer, the middle layer being these thin fibers like a spider web that comes out, and also in the middle layer of the arachnoid there's what's called cerebral spinal fluid, and this fluid circulates through and cushions the brain. So whenever you think of cerebral spinal fluid, you think of protection, So, when someone goes and takes spinal fluid out to check to see if there's infection in your spinal fluid, that's where the spinal fluid comes. It's a cerebral spinal fluid in the meninges. And then we have the pia mater, P-I-A mater, is that C? Pia mater, written right here, which forms the delicate covering that rests directly against the brain. So we have the 3 listed there. Let me turn here and you can see my notes here. So you have 3 there, you see. We have the brain, the spinal cord, and the meninges. And then in the meninges here, see if I can put it there, we have dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater. Dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater in the meninges. And like I said, the meninges are a lot of times, you think of meningitis, that'd be an infection of the meninges, which can be very, very serious, because meninges, which really protects, the brain and the spinal cord. So, okay, let's look up here at this picture, see? So this picture of the spinal cord. See how the spinal cord is here, and the nerves is the intervertebral disc, automatic nerve coming out here. We got the gray matter. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. What's the difference between gray matter and white matter? And basically, gray matters consist of axons, and white matter has a lot of myelin. And we're going to go over that a little bit more. So just wanted to show that picture in the down here. You can see now we're going to talk about neurons, and this is a neuron. We kind of went over neurons before, didn't we, when you're a little bit younger, and we actually did them in clay, as you remember. Remember I had Adele doing them too? Okay, neurons. There's two kinds of neurons. There's the glial cells, and they support and insulate the nerve tissues. And then we have the regular neurons. So when you talk about glial cells, they're not really neurons in themselves. So the neurons have three different parts, and we know this from before. We've studied this before. And we have the cell body, and we have from the cell body contains a nucleus. That's where the nucleus is. It's just a cell body and has a nucleus. And it has most of the nerve cytoplasm in the cell body. The cell body is the main part. And then we have the dendrites, and the dendrites are those hundreds and thousands of them that branch off and extend and receive all these different nerve impulses from other neurons to conduct them all to the cell body. And then we have the axon, which is a single long extension that relays impulses from one cell body, from the cell body, I should say, to a neuron, and then on to other neurons. So here we have this picture of, here's the cell body with the nucleus here, with the cell body, and then we have all these dendrites coming off here, right? As the cell body goes down to the axon, that comes down here to the axon. Schwann cell, we're going to talk, is a type of glial cell, and that type of cell, basically what the glial cells insulate the nerve tissue and protect it. See how they will protect it. So this is the structure of the neuron. We got the dendrites there, and the nucleus and the dendrites on down to the axon, which goes on to other neurons, so connects to them. And this is a kind of a long extension here. Okay, let me go on to the next. Okay, so see how we can see this. I'm focused in good. There we go. So let's go on to sorry, I'm kind of skipping around here. So there's different kinds of neurons, and we have a sensory neuron and a motor neuron, right? The sensory neurons, basically those sensory neurons, they transmit sensory information to the central nervous system. So they're picking these things up like in the skin and touch and sensations, and they're bringing it to the central nervous system, which to the spinal cord and the brain, right? So that we can think about what kind of sensory, like heat or hearing or touch or sight, all those things. And then we have the motor neuron that relays signals to the muscles and glands, and kind of have see how these, this is an interneuron that relays between the neurons here. And then we have these neurons, the motor neurons, which see how different they look? And they relay signals to the muscles and the glands. So nerve impulses travel in one direction in a nerve fiber from the dendrites, that go from the dendrites to the cell body, which I showed you before, and from the cell body to the axon. One directional. They don't go in two directions ever. The end of the axon is divided into many short filaments that attach to many other nerve cells. So let's talk about that gray matter in that. Let's see if I can go back to that subject here. Let's see. Neurons and interneurons, connective tissue. Let's go down. Well, the gray matter in the let's go back to the one we had before here. So we have right here. So we have the gray matter and the white matter. So the gray matter is in the brain and the spinal cord, and it consists of cell bodies, mainly cell bodies. So you have a lot of gray matter in your brain, especially in the cortex, in the cerebral cortex of your brain, because it doesn't have gray matter, doesn't have, it's just cell bodies, doesn't have a lot of white specialized covering called myelin. The white matter is composed of axons too, with glial cells. Remember those glial cells? Did I show you that? Where the glial cells right here and here, and you have the myelin sheaths on them. So that's composed of white matter. So the white matter makes it white because it has a lot of myelin in it. And the gray matter, because gray matter is axons in the brain, so which the brain is protected, but the gray matter makes the brain that gray color. So neuron cell bodies are found only in the brain, spinal cord, and ganglia. So plexus. What is a plexus? Well, let's go on and find out. Okay, gray matter and white matter. So here we go with ganglia and plexus. Neuron cell bones are found this board and ganglia. What are ganglia? They're masses of cell bodies. And the plexus are a network of interconnected nerve fibers. So let's go on. Just those are two definitions there. They talk about the brachial plexus and how it's at the back of the shoulder. It branches to form the median nerve onto the arm nerves. You can just see how the nerves flow, from your neck to your arm down and to move your arm, into your motor, into your nerve. The nerve center is a cell of cell bodies in the brain or spinal cord, and then just the way it moves through kind of explains here. So the classification, we talked about the sensory neurons and the motor neurons and the interneurons. So, and that goes on right here. It talks about them right here. So we're going through here. So let's go down. Blood-brain, this talks about the blood-brain barrier. Well, the blood-brain barrier is a special protection against infection because the brain is really tightly sealed to prevent bacteria and viruses to come in. If they did, your brain would be affected with all kinds of problems and harmed easy. So to protect it, they have a blood-brain barrier that's tightly sealed with these capillary walls. So they're kind of showing the normal capillary, how it looks, and the brain capillary with the extra connective tissue and everything, so that it can protect the brain better. So let's go on to the next one here. Okay, so we're talking about first of all, here we're talking about some diseases. We're talking about meningitis. And meningitis, unfortunately, some bacteria and viruses come in and slip through the blood-brain barrier and get in, and they can cause a disease called meningitis. Meningitis is where these invading organisms, could be bacteria or virus, and they come in, and this causes the brain, the meninges to swell up and cause a person, your brain can swell onto the meninges, can swell and suffer from headache, nausea, vomit, fever, stiff neck. You can't bend forward, very stiff neck. A stiff neck is a sign of meningitis. And also a person may get so bad that they slip into a coma and cause serious brain injury. A lot of times it affects children because children don't have a great blood brain barrier as adults do. I had prayed with somebody that had meningitis. They thought they were going to die, and God healed them of meningitis right after we left. It was pretty miraculous, but I won't talk about that now, take up the time. So poliomyelitis attacks the spinal cord. And what it is, it's caused by a virus that enters the motor neurons and destroys some of the skeletal muscles that connect to the brain, and those muscles become paralyzed. So your muscles start becoming paralyzed to the point that your legs become paralyzed, and the point that your lungs could be paralyzed and you die. So this used to be a very serious and left a lot of people in wheelchairs, let's just say that, during a time. But now they have had a vaccine that actually practically cured polio. Now we've only had 140 cases of polio reported in 2020. So polio is still a problem in some areas like Asia, though, it says. But polio is one of those diseases caused by a virus that gets in. And then let's see, the peripheral nervous system. We're going to talk about the peripheral nervous system just a little bit. The peripheral nervous system right here. Let's see if there's any This talks about the cranial nerves. So cranial nerves and the peripheral. Okay, this is the cranial nerves. So anyway, the peripheral nervous system has these bundles of nerve fibers called axons that branch from the spinal cord, connecting to the central nervous system to the extremities. And many are long nerves, axons. Some of those axons can be like a meter long. That is huge. Sciatic nerve is one of the longest that connects the legs with the spinal cord. So I'm talking about a meter long. That's pretty long. So we have cranial nerves. These are the cranial nerves, and there's 12 of them. And they're pairs that come from the brain. Here's the 12 of them. Olfactory smell, optic sight, oculomotor controls the eyes, trochlear controls the muscles of the eye, trigeminal, sensations of the face, abducens controls the lateral rectus muscle of the eye, facial nerve, vestibulocochlear, hearing, these are hearing, and senses glossopharyngeal, so the sensations of the tongue, vagus, or vagus, either, I think it's vagus, sensations of the internal organs, accessory sensations of the neck, and hypoglossal controls the throat. You can see all those cranial nerves. So let's go to the next. So here's your body here. So as for the cranial nerves, we have spinal nerves, and there's actually 31 pairs. We had 12 cranial nerves, and now we have, in the peripheral system, have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. And each supplies a body part. It's almost like a two-way highway. So we have 3 different kinds of spinal nerves. And first we have mixed nerves. And the mixed nerves basically have both sensory and motor nerves in them. And then we have the sensory nerve fibers. And these carry the impulses of like light and sound and such from parts of the body to the spinal cord. So sensory, think of, you got light, taste, and it brings it back to the spinal cord into your brain so you can think of what sensations you're feeling, right? And it analyzes it in your brain. The motor nerve fibers carry the impulses from the brain. Here's the motor nerve from the brain to the muscles so that you can move your muscles. And they leave through, the thing about the two different, but by the sensory nerves leave through the rear nerve root, the posterior to the back. The sensory nerves move to the back, and the motor nerves move to the anterior nerve root in the front. So that's the difference. So the motor nerves are coming in the front, and the sensory nerves are going out the back. So, and then we have this last, and you've learned a little bit about this, and then we'll stop this. We'll be done with this part of the chapter. And automatic control we're going to talk about, because we have an automatic nervous system. What is the automatic nervous system? It's where your functions are not controlled consciously. So you have these routine body functions that you don't have to think about, like your heart beating, or your digestive system working, or your endocrine glands, and we have thousands of vital functions that are controlled, and they're controlled in the gland called the hypothalamus. Here we have this picture of these nerves too, as the cervical nerves, the brachial nerves. These are controlling all the nerves of the motor, sacral, sciatic, all these nerves. And then, but the automatic control those areas that we don't have to think about. That's the automatic. So we have a whole nother nervous system called the automatic nervous system. And the automatic nervous system has 2 parts. What are the 2 parts? Right here, we have the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. So we're not talking about the peripheral and the central nervous system and all that, but we're talking now about the automatic nervous system. The automatic nervous system has 2 parts. The automatic things that are done, they're sympathetic or they're parasympathetic. Well, so what's the difference between those? Well, the sympathetic system is where your body reacts to stress. are like, it responds to your increased activity and emergencies, makes everything like your heart beats faster, and your breathing's faster, and supplies more blood to your body, and stimulates in danger or stress. So sympathetics, when, all of a sudden you have all this fear and stress and your blood pressure goes up and everything, that's a sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic division is what balances it back to normal. And it slows down metabolic rates and transmits impulses to the heart to block the central nervous system, to slow it down. And some organs, but there's some organs will be speeded up. Like now your stomach will work, because your stomach wouldn't work when your stomach just stops, because it's for the central sympathetic nervous system. But now the parasympathetic returns everything or back to normal, and you can rest assured that your body is at rest again. So this last picture here is a picture here, as you can see, the interneurons, the neurons in the spinal cord. So here we have the motor neurons. Remember, these are cells of our muscular system, right? We already looked at these before, and we have the nerves coming from there, and as the nerve fibers are going to the brain this way, and you have the interneurons and the interneurons that are in the middle, and then the cell bodies coming, and then you have the sensory neurons. So actually, let's say this is how it goes. The sensory neurons, dendrites, come in, and you're taking basically sensations of the skin. You're going back, going up this way, the sensations, and then you're going down this way, and then you're going to the nerve fibers, going from the brain to here. So when I said from here, it would actually be from the skin. This is more of the skin. So sensory neuron going this way, and then going to the brain. So it's almost like a reflex there. So your sensory neuron, your dendrites, your skin, going to the ganglion here, cell body, motor neuron, going through the spinal cord area, going from the brain, as you go from the brain to the motor neuron to the neuromuscular junction. So that's how they work.